You know, if you ask any car owner about Hyundai, one thing probably comes to mind almost immediately: that famous 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. It's been the brand's calling card for over 2 decades. But even now, that single promise still sparks a massive debate about what Hyundai really is.
So what's the real story with this warranty? Is it a badge of honor, a sign that a company is so incredibly sure of its product that it can back it for a whole decade? Or is it a huge red flag, a kind of necessary evil for a car that you should probably expect to have issues with? Well, as you're about to see, the answer is a lot more complicated than you might think.
I mean, on one side, the logic is pretty straightforward, right? No company is going to offer a warranty that's going to bankrupt them. Just like this user, Easy Peasy Lads, points out, the whole reason the warranty exists is because Hyundai is betting you won't need to use it. It's a power move, a sign of total confidence in their quality.
But then, you hear stories like this. For every person who sees the warranty as a sign of strength, there's someone else who sees it as a much-needed safety net. This owner, they love their car, but having it break down with less than 10,000 miles, that just shatters your confidence. For them, the warranty isn't some nice little bonus. It feels like an absolute necessity for a brand they're just not sure they can trust.
To really get this whole paradox, we've got to rewind the clock, because before Hyundai was famous for its warranty, it was famous for something else. And that reputation, to put it bluntly like one user did, was for making shitboxes.
Here's something you might not know. Hyundai didn't even start with cars. It was actually born from the ashes of post-war Korea, founded way back in 1947 as a construction company. Yep, they were building roads and bridges long before they ever touched an engine. They dipped their toes in the auto world in '68 by assembling Ford Cortinas, but the dream was always bigger. And by 1975, they did it. They built the Hyundai Pony, Korea's first ever homegrown car.
The problem was their ambition kind of outpaced their quality. Those early Hyundais that came to North America got a reputation and fast. They were seen as cheap, unreliable, just not very good. And as this Reddit user says, that perception stuck like glue. It became this past that the company just couldn't seem to shake.
So you've got this terrible reputation brewing. And then, in the late 90s, it slams head-on into a massive national disaster. A perfect storm that forced Hyundai to make the single biggest bet in its entire history.
The year was 1997. The Asian financial crisis was tearing through the region, and it hit South Korea hard. The whole economy was teetering on the edge of collapse, and it threatened to take the country's biggest companies down with it.
Now, to get what was happening, you have to understand this term, chaebol. These were these giant family-run conglomerates, and the Hyundai Group was a perfect example. They were into everything, from shipbuilding to construction. They were the engines of the Korean economy, but their complicated, debt-heavy structure made them super vulnerable when the crisis hit. So this crisis basically forced their hand. Weighed down by just enormous debt, the giant Hyundai Group started to break apart. Hyundai Motors got spun off, forced to go it alone for the very first time. And suddenly, they're in a terrible spot. They have a financial crisis on one side, and on the other, absolutely zero consumer trust. Survival was not a sure thing.
So, what do you do when your back is against the wall? In 1999, Hyundai decided to roll the dice. This wasn't just some new ad campaign. They made a promise so big, so audacious, it was either going to save them or completely destroy them. They introduced the 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty.
Just think about the stakes here. They were absolutely massive. If the cars really were as bad as everyone thought, the repair bills alone could sink the company. And if they couldn't honor the warranty, the reputation would be toast forever. But the reward? Oh, the reward was a complete rebirth. A shot at rebuilding trust, silencing the critics, and basically forcing themselves to get better from the inside out.
And that massive gamble, man, it didn't just pay off. It completely rewired the company's DNA and paved the way for the global giant we see today.
And this is the really crucial part. The warranty wasn't just some clever marketing slogan. It was a public promise that held the entire company's feet to the fire. To avoid going broke, they had no choice. They had to build better cars. That promise on the outside sparked a revolution on the inside.
And the results? They were almost instant, and they were huge. In the US market, where their reputation was basically in the gutter, sales literally doubled in just 4 years. It was proof that people were willing to give them a shot, as long as that risk was taken off the table.
You could just feel the momentum building. Riding this new wave of trust and, frankly, a lot of cash, Hyundai went on an absolute tear. In '99, they bought their rival, Kia. By 2000, they were posting record profits. And by 2004, they were so confident they broke ground on a massive factory right here in the US, cementing their spot as a real global player.
And honestly, this one comment from a Redditor kind of sums up the entire journey perfectly. They remember when Hyundais were shitboxes, and now they're on their fourth one, saying that brands like GM and Ford actually feel cheap by comparison. I mean, that is a massive, massive shift in how people see the brand.
Which brings us right back to today. Because even with this incredible turnaround story, that old ghost, it hasn't completely disappeared. The debate we kicked off with is still very, very much alive. And here's the thing about reputations. They're easy to ruin and incredibly hard to rebuild. And while millions of new drivers have been won over, the memory of those early, not-so-great cars is long. For some people, the question is still there. Did the cars get way better, or did Hyundai just get way better at paying for the repairs?
And it's the modern stories that keep that skepticism alive. Here's an owner of a 2018 Tucson who calls it a death trap after a major engine problem. It's a stark reminder that even with all the improvements, serious issues are still a painful reality for some owners.
And then there's this other huge complaint you hear all the time. For some people, like this user Doom Vegan, the issue isn't even the car breaking down, it's the nightmare of trying to use the warranty. They argue the whole process is so frustrating that people just give up, and that turns the brand's biggest strength into its biggest source of anger.
So where does that leave us? In the end, it seems like the warranty isn't just one thing. It really has this dual identity. For sure, it's a symbol of a company that totally reinvented itself, a genuine sign of confidence. But it's also still a necessary shield, protecting buyers from the echoes of a rough past, and, yeah, from the problems that still pop up today.
And it all leaves us with this one big, fascinating question. Hyundai proved that a single, crazy bold promise can totally change a company's future, force it to be better, and win over a whole new generation. But can a promise, no matter how big, ever truly, fully erase the past? Well, that's a question that's still being answered every single day, in dealerships and on highways all over the world.